Please welcome to the stage Kingdom Holding Company CEO Talal Ibrahim Al-Maiman and Bloomberg's Erik Schatzker.
Go first? Okay. Hello once again, everybody. I'm delighted to be sitting here with Talal Al-Maiman. Talal, great to see you. Thank you for joining us here in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
You're all polling pros by now, so bear with me as I ask you to participate one more time. In fact, I'm going to ask you two more times, but this is where we'll start. Over the next 12 months, how will you approach investing in Saudi Arabia? A, invest more in Saudi Arabia. B, invest less in Saudi Arabia. C, no change. D, avoid all investment in Saudi Arabia. This is interesting, don't you think?
Yeah.
You know, on balance, positive.
I was hoping to see the 40 to be like 90, but we'll try.
I'm going to mention again, Talal, what this audience has heard several times already today, that Aramco sold $12 billion in bonds. And the sale was among the most oversubscribed in history. Did Kingdom Holding buy any?
No, we have not.
Is that the kind of investment Kingdom Holding would ever make?
Well, it's, you know, the yield on it is a bit lower than what we expect, but I think it's definitely an investment that can never go wrong.
What should the demand for that issue tell us about how foreign investors view Saudi Arabia?
The only thing I could say, I'm so impressed with the vote of confidence more than anything else. I think this is a success to Saudi Arabia, success to what I consider the private sector, because the government believes Aramco now is a part of the private sector, and therefore I'm hopeful that it is just a huge vote of confidence.
The big question many are wrestling with is this, and I'm going to ask it of you because I'm interested in your perspective. Does the success of this bond offering mean that Saudi Arabia has been forgiven for the Khashoggi murder?
Well, this is a topic that has been discussed and debated, and I think, honestly, it's been, I have given my views on this, that this criminal act is unacceptable, unwarranted, and the government of Saudi Arabia, through its legal system, is taking care of this issue. And I have no doubt that our leadership is going to put this to bed sooner than later.
Kingdom Holding has a number of close relationships with foreign investors. I'm thinking, for example, of Bill Gates, one of His Royal Highness Prince Al-Walid's close partners and friends. What are your partners telling you about their posture towards Saudi Arabia today?
Well, I think we're seeing more interest in Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, our partners are now talking to us about the potential of co-investing in Saudi Arabia in certain areas. You know, we have 9 of the largest corporates of France is working with us also. And we really see huge potential in Saudi Arabia. And just a note here, we are considered one of the largest repatriation of funds coming from abroad to Saudi Arabia, when we sold Fox and we sold News and reinvested it in the Bank Saudi Franci. And we've done that, incidentally, 2 years prior to Mr. Murdoch sell his shares to Disney.
So we're waiting, we have been waiting for more news of that nature. Domestic investments in Saudi Arabia by Kingdom Holding on its own or with some of its partners as co-investors. When are those deals going to come?
Oh, soon. Listen, 2019 has been great to us. We've done the Kareem deal. Lyft has gone public. We've made huge returns. You know, when people were talking of technology, we were invested in technology. In 2011, we invested in Twitter, we invested in JD.com, we invested in, of course, Lyft, Careem, and now somehow we are invested in Uber. So
via Careem.
Yes, through the deal itself. So really, it's exciting, 2019, and we've just signed term sheets for $1 billion with 3 international banks and 2 local banks. So really, the full firepower is ready to be employed into the local market mainly, but we'll also keep the door open for potential international investments.
So you've raised $1 billion in debt financing.
We have.
And what do you plan to do with it? When you say some of it's going local, there are lots of things you can or could invest in Saudi Arabia. So give us a flavor for what the priorities are.
First of all, the government is about to privatize some of the companies. Number 2, I hear that the government also is about to sell part of what they own in already listed companies that we are interested in. And the bigger part is in the family businesses, which are really need institutionalization. It needs corporate governance. It needs some kind of filters on all their operations. We believe if Kingdom find the right opportunity within the family sector, we would be very, very interested.
So once upon a time, Kingdom Holding was known for its international investment profile. Prince Al-Walid built his reputation by investing in Citigroup, for example, in Motorola, and Apple, and News Corp. You mentioned Disney, the list goes on and on.
Let's not forget Snap.
Let's not forget Snap. And Twitter you mentioned, and JD.com. Some of these have been extraordinarily successful investments. Has the strategy changed? Is the approach now to invest, is it on balance more of a domestic investment priority than it is an international investment priority?
We basically try to balance our investments from sectorial point of view and geographical point of view and also industries. I mean, we cannot just invest totally in the United States and Saudi Arabia in finance. We cannot do that. So what we're trying to do now is balance our portfolios. We're exiting some matured assets. We're re-employing and recycling our funds into the country. And like I said, the problem with the United States market today is a bit overvalued. We view it that to be. So having to say, you were in the United States, are you now changing strategy? Not at all. It's just the time issue. And we believe the time today is in Saudi Arabia.
So that brings us to an important point. You mentioned how well Kingdom Holding did on its investment in Careem, sold to Uber. You're going to get some cash. You're going to get some shares in Lyft, which is now public. I guess it leads me to a number of questions. Do you plan to be an investor in both Lyft and Uber at the same time?
Why not? We're an investment house. We don't love our investments. We actually make money out of our investments. So,
well, one might see maintaining both as inconsistent because they are arch rivals, and some of the competition between them is a zero-sum game. What Uber loses, Lyft wins, and vice versa.
Sure, but remember, Uber is a much bigger player, diversified more. Lyft is focused, very much focused on the area of mobility. And I'm not sure what are their plans, but for sure, we like what we see so far. And we believe in the management, young, aggressive, and there's always a place for more than one.
Which stock do you think has more upside?
Kingdom Holding.
Touché. And will the proceeds from these sales go exclusively into domestic investments? Do you plan to recycle some of the capital into technology? And if you do, will it be into other unicorns?
Well, we always have an eye and the network to serve us when identifying unicorns. Yet, we are really seeing a huge potential in Saudi Arabia. This is a country that we live in, a country we operate from, and a country that deserves much more from its investors to look at the opportunities today. For example, if you look at our investment, it ranges from 2 years to 20. real estate. It's a long-term play. We're building the tallest tower in the world. We're building the infrastructure around it. We're set up to take the lead on technologies employed in infrastructure and environment friendly and the like, speed, security, and safety. And therefore, we're also in, as you know, in healthcare, we are in education. So we're in about 13 sectors. And it's just the only one that we're not in, because we're not allowed to be, is oil. So.
But are you afraid? I ask about the unicorns because many people expect that Uber's IPO is going to be a game changer one way or the other. Could hurt the public market by sucking $10 billion out of other equities, for example, other investments. It could prove to be overvalued. We look, for example, at what's going to happen to Pinterest. That company is going to be IPOing in a down round, suggests to some that maybe unicorns are getting a little ahead of themselves. You did mention that you thought the U.S. market, on balance, was overvalued. What's your point of view?
My point of view is, like, you cannot compare Pinterest-like to Uber. Uber is or Lyft, for that matter, is a life changer. You know, today when you say Uber foods, a lot of people are building houses without kitchens. You know, it's affecting the daily life of people. It's just like the late Bill Gates. Sorry, Steve Jobs. Sorry.
Well, let's say hi to Bill.
Hi, Bill.
I hope that he's watching.
I hope he's not. So, and don't tell him, please. Steve Jobs came to the world with an iPhone that changed the world. Everybody's talking iPhone. Everybody's using applications. Every unicorn today is using this man's vision. And going back.
So you would liken the disruptive role that Uber has played to that of Apple and the iPhone?
Absolutely, absolutely. I am, as you know, I'm the vice chairman of Banque Saudi Fransi. I'm also a member of the executive committee. I am chairing also the strategy committee and the bank. And all we look at today is technology, disruptive technology, for a lighter asset bank, a more efficient bank. We want you to bank in everywhere. Everywhere you are, you can bank. So therefore, yes, technology is a driver behind all the other economies, in my views.
Now, of course, valuations differ among markets, but the bull market, the global bull market, is 10 years old. Is now a better time to be buying or selling?
Well, I think it's time to look into innovation. It's time to look into more. I'm not sure about having to sell or buy. It's not an absolute answer here. There are things that probably matured and you need to exit and look somewhere else. But there are things that always get you the returns you're looking for. You know, it's like for example, our investment in the Four Seasons hotels. So it's just forever to be. And there are things that we have reached an end of the cycle, and I think we should exit and move somewhere else. So I cannot give you an absolute answer to undefined question per se.
Well, are there any assets or classes of assets where it feels to you as though they are nearing the end of their cycle? I know you're principally not a credit investor, but people talk about the end of the credit cycle, and it's
Sure.
time. If you've made money in credit, now is perhaps not a bad time to get out. How do you look at the rest of Kingdom Holdings' investment portfolio and say similar things about different classes of assets?
Yeah, mainly I think if we'd be like to monetize on is the real estate part. I think it's about time that we monetize part of it, especially the income-generating ones. So we're thinking of some kind of a monetization program to our real estate in Saudi Arabia.
Well, but that has been under consideration for some time.
Correct.
Prince Al-Walid told me last year that one of the options under discussion was a spin-off of the real estate holdings, and to date that hasn't happened.
Yes.
So What's the thinking right now, and what's the most likely outcome?
The reason behind it not happening is that we have debated that through our institutional process at the investment committee. What is best, IPO or REITs, hold, rebuild, asset sales, all these things still on the table, and I think we're about to make the decision soon. So,
well,
hold on.
What's off the table?
For the time being, I think our investment at the banks, our investment in our petrochemical national industrialization company, تصنيع الوطنية, and Four Seasons. Do you want me to continue? And Accor. Well, mainly we are focused on actually monetizing mainly our part of our real estate portfolio, which is huge.
It is. And how long? So you say you're about to make a decision?
Correct.
About means roughly?
About, I'd say, 3 months.
Within the next 3 months?
Yes.
And how big is the real estate investment portfolio today?
It's huge. Between Jeddah and Riyadh and our two trophy assets, Savoy and George Tank, it's quite a big part of the balance sheet.
So a potential spin-off or an IPO isn't just international assets, and it isn't just domestic assets, it would be everything.
We just view everything, all the assets that we have, but the main focus on monetization today is on our local domestic assets.
Okay. Well, speaking of local assets, much of the discussion here in this room today has been about investment in this region. You and I are speaking specifically about investment in Saudi Arabia. So here's my second polling question for the audience, if you wouldn't mind pulling out your phones once again. What's holding up foreign investment in Saudi Arabia? This is really what we're getting at. And specifically, how can Saudi Arabia attract more foreign investment? Reduce bureaucratic red tape, that's one option. Second is judicial reform. The third is social liberalization. And the fourth is infrastructure spending. Let's see where things shake out so we have an idea how the audience feels, and then you can tell me how you feel. So overwhelmingly, social liberalization, a movement that is already underway in Saudi Arabia. Would you agree with that?
No, unfortunately I don't. I think we need everything to be done, no doubt. Maybe less of the infrastructure, I agree. It's having 7%, it is not an issue at all. But the rest of it, I think it's an equal footing because change has started to happen. I believe we're very comfortable with the vision of 2030 being, at least we have a vision today. We never had one before. Today we have a vision, we have young leadership, we have a capable leadership, we have determined leadership, we have the right private sector moving forward and listening, by the way. Before it used to be a talk, today it's an objective. Having the vision to be executed is the challenge. Is the challenge for all of us. The government has put the regulation and continuing to do so. The government has set the vision. And by the way, the vision, if you really look at it closely, it's so simple. If you ask somebody from the West what you wish to see your country to have, he would give you 2 or 3 requests. If you ask somebody from Saudi Arabia, he'll give you probably 10. And the differential, which is 7, between the 10 and the 3, will be opportunities in the country. It's so easy. People want entertainment. Cinemas are being open everywhere. Parks, concerts, women driving, everything that a normal family needs is going to be happening in Saudi Arabia, which will probably encourage household spending in country. So I'm quite hopeful on that part.
Of the opportunities you've discussed with potential partners, what interests them most? Well, if you notice, Ripplewood, they just invested with us in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So we really have a diverse request from our partners. Some of them talk to us about the entertainment, to develop parks, amusement parks, cinemas,
less of retail, less of shopping centers like it used to be. You know, it used to be the big thing, but today it's less required. But I can see huge opportunities when it comes to the people needs, including education, including better healthcare, including diagnostic centers. So all these are opportunities that we will be looking at in the near future.
I mentioned earlier that Prince Al Walid had built his reputation as an investor in public companies. Of course, he did much, much more, but that's how he gained fame, certainly outside Saudi Arabia,
yes,
and to a certain degree inside Saudi Arabia. A lot of people would say that public companies aren't a particularly good match for what you have, which is permanent capital, right? Not only the prince's capital, but your shareholders' capital is also permanent capital. What makes the most sense? What's the best match? Where you're not, for example, you don't need the liquidity of the public market for the most part, like a pension fund or an endowment. You don't need it tomorrow. You might need it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So what in your mind is our final question makes the most sense for Kingdom Holding, the type of investment that is the best match to permanent capital?
Well, I think anything that touches the people and the consumers. We're very much focused on there, and you know, you got to take the person from his household, from his house, all the way to work and back. Take him to his vacation and back. During this trip, there are so many demands that is required, and I believe Kingdom Holding can play a big role in changing also the lives of the individuals in Saudi Arabia, from bringing the expertise inside, bringing better education into the country, bringing, like I said, better healthcare and diagnostic centers, which I think are very much needed in Saudi Arabia now.
Talal, I want to thank you very much for joining me here.
Thank you.
Bloomberg Invest Abu Dhabi. It's such a pleasure to have you and to see you.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and if I may, not to cut short the applause, but it is my duty to make, if you don't mind, Talal, just a couple of announcements, and then we'll exit the stage together. I want to thank you all for joining us here at Bloomberg Invest Abu Dhabi. We hope you've enjoyed the sessions. We hope you've conducted some valuable networking and made some connections and started to build some relationships that will last perhaps the rest of your lifetimes. It's important for me to thank our founding sponsor, ADGM, our global presenting sponsor, Wmaqabla, from whom you've heard quite a lot today, I'm pleased to say. Our supporting sponsors, Standard Chartered, and our participating sponsor, Saxo Bank. They've all made this event possible for the lot of us. And now, lunch was mentioned a while ago. Too early, I thought. But finally, it is time for lunch. We'd like to invite you all to join us for a networking lunch downstairs in the Leva Ballroom. And for those who have pre-registered, the pre-registration part of this is important. There's a gateway to China lunch. There's some signage that you'll see, or members of our staff who can help you get there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure having you.